grave at the bottom of the sea. Tell me what were their names? Tell me what were their names? Did you have a friend on the good Reuben James? And so on. You Let me backtrack a little bit. A lot of the most famous old songs, you can call them folk songs, were actually written about topics of the day. In 17th and 18th century London, they had ballads sold in the streets called broadsides about the latest pirate hanging. And in Ireland, there was a famous topical song called Lily Bolero. Ho, Brother Teague, has you heard the decree that we shall have a new deputy? They say that that ballad cost King James the throne. It was so popular. And in this country, we had the ballad of Jesse James, the train robber, Casey Jones, the railroad engineer. Some black person made a ballad about John Henry, the steel driving man, or about the boll weevil, which was eating up the cotton crops. These were all topical songs of the day, and Woody just continued this tradition and got us also doing it, and to a certain extent, this is what must be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people with guitars are doing this day, making up a song about some event of this day, whether it's a national problem or a local problem. Of course, not all the songs are good songs. You can almost say as a rule of thumb, 999 out of 1,000 aren't worth listening to. But the apex of a pyramid is as high as the base is broad. If you're going to get a lot of songs, you'll get some good ones, and there have been some great songs written. Right here in the Hudson Valley, we have a couple of the greatest songwriters I know. Jay Mankeeta, who's written some hilarious songs about being a vegetarian. Pat Humphrey, who's written a song which, within a year of her writing it, was being sung by women in the peace movement around the English-speaking world. In Australia and Greenham Common in England, they were singing her song. We'll keep on walking forward, never turning back, never turning back. Charlie King makes a song, Mr. Taft can dig it, Mr. Hartley can haul it, but I'm going to leave it in the ground. About a wildcat coal strike. But a topical song could be written in your family. About the best song I've written in a long while was one I made up for a family birthday party. My grandma, she can make a soup with a little of this and that. And her grandchildren sang it for her at the birthday party. So much for topical songs.
In the 60s, we saw a lot of what were called folk festivals spring up places. So Newport was the most well-known college folk clubs brought and folk festivals brought a lot of traditional singers to the attention of a broader and largely urban audience. And I was wondering if you thought that traditional performances by people within the tradition were able to be fully appreciated when they're viewed by people from outside the tradition on a stage in a professional performance context.
Good question. I have a friend who doesn't like festivals. He says, carnival atmosphere is not what I like for my music. He likes to sit around the kitchen table and swap some songs. He's a wonderful musician, but he stays away from folk festivals. And it's always open to question, can you understand another culture than your own? It's axiomatic among anthropologists that you can't. You've heard of the ethnocentric predicament. You're raised in one culture, and you try and understand another culture, but you never can 100% understand it, because you haven't walked enough miles in the other person's shoes. On the other hand, all around the world it's happening. People are learning each other's music and are borrowing ideas from each other. Africans are learning European music, and Europeans and Americans are learning African music. The whole world's getting mixed up for good or bad. I'd like to emphasize one thing. You keep mentioning Newport. Newport got a lot of publicity. We had 10 or 20,000 people there. But you know they have folk festivals every year all around this country. You have 50 and 100,000 people. Newport showed what could be done. And now there are probably 10 or 100, hundreds of times as many festivals going on in this country than there were in the 1960s. Some of the biggest are in Canada, the Winnipeg Festival, the Vancouver Festival. Oh, but there's a big one in Seattle this very week. 100,000 people come to it. Seattle Folklife Festival. It's free. Our little... Oh, wait till this goes by. Our little Clearwater Festival called the Hudson River Revival, we got 5,000 or 10,000 people, 2 days running. We purposely mix it up. We have a wide range of music, and this being the year of 1992, we got lots of Native Americans there. It's going to be very interesting. Now, we'll be singing songs with them, not just listening to them. I'm with a gang from New York City that are going to be teaching people how to sing some Native American songs. Some Native Americans will be leading off, but we'll be all joining in with them, not just listening. That's an important thing. You see, in the old days, when music was made, you were joining in. If it was a ballad, you might join in on the tu-ah-you-ah-ya at the end of the verse. If it was a work song, the whole gang might be singing it, whether you were chopping trees or straightening a railroad track. And you might consider that one of the dangerous things about the whole... I've got some more, I can't talk. One of the big problems is the microphone's up there. I can't speak when my chin's up in the air. You might want to put it down here.
Hear you quite well.
Huh?
With your chin down, it's still picking you up quite well.
Okay. It's almost a central problem in modern life, and this thing they call folk music is no exception, that we're being turned into a race of spectators. We're told, go do your job, earn some money, and then pay for an expert to do things for you. Don't try and be an expert athlete. You just look at the tube at some expert athletes. Don't try and be an expert anything. Just turn on the tube and watch somebody really knows how to do it. And of course, most ridiculous of all is the husband and wife are sitting there on a couch watching the expert lover pretend to make love to another expert lover. How silly can you get?
When in the 50s and 60s, people started bringing a lot of traditional performers to the city, folks like John Summer and himself, and we're bringing folks up to different environments. Did you think at that time that you were witnessing a real blossoming of interest in traditional music among different audiences? And if you did, has that been borne out by what you've seen since then?
Even in the 1960s, I was worried about the fact that the audiences were mainly there to applaud and weren't singing enough. So we started little workshops, and many festivals now purposely have little workshops, 50 people here, 100 there, 20 there, and they're not just listening. But I have to confess, this is not the mainstream thing that's being done. Mainstream thing says, turn on the microphone, go out and show how good you are, and be glad that you can earn some money from the people who come in, sit down and pay you to entertain them.
talked a little bit about the 60s, and that was a time when something which was called folk music experienced a huge commercial boom, and you and Doreen have discussed this a little bit, I know, and most popular literature, and even I found some academic literature refers to this time as a folk music revival. You've called it, as I understand, a time when commercial interests labeled pop music as folk in order to find a market niche or some way to sell it. And I wonder if you could elaborate on that thought a little bit in responding to the question, did you think there was a folk music revival in the 1960s, and if it is associated with what people think of as a revival?
What a lot of us call the Great Folk Scare of 1964, I'm glad to say, did not last long. And when people say, do you think it'll come again? I say, I hope not. What's needed is people to make music themselves in their homes, in the churches, on the job, waiting for the bus, riding in the car. But not just turning on a loudspeaker somewhere, whether it's a tape or a CD or whatever it is, and just listen. I admit, there's been a kind of Walkman revolution, and it says you can move your body to the rhythm of the music.
Let's go back to the last question a little bit. You said you were glad the folk
We
scare,
said 3, but it was 4.
probably won't come again. You hope it won't come again. And I'm wondering, in that regard, have your views on that evolved over the 30 years or so since it happened? At the time, did you think perhaps you were experiencing what was going to be a real arrival of traditional music in the cities, and did you have those expectations dashed, or did you always feel you're not right about what was going on?
I was suspicious, and still am suspicious, of the music business, even though I'm involved with it. And there's some good results. Many people were introduced to wonderful music that they never would have heard of if it hadn't been for the Newport Folk Festival and other festivals like that. And not only did people hear a lot of good music they didn't know about before, but the people who made it were encouraged. Down in Louisiana were people they called Cajuns because their ancestors had been deported from Acadia, Nova Scotia, 200 years earlier. And these Cajuns made their own music, but most people laughed at them. They were called poor white trash. And even the Cajun musicians were made to feel that their music wasn't worth anything. When Dewey Balfour came up to Newport, his friends said, "Oh, Dewey, don't go there. They're just going to get you up there to make fun of you." But Dewey came back. He said, "You know, those folks in Newport were wonderful. They danced and were learning from me. They weren't making fun of me." And pretty soon there's all sorts of other Cajun musicians have now become internationally famous.
There was a lot of topical songs written in the early 60s. In fact, I think a lot of people have their clearest memories with the time due to some of the topical songs. Folks like Peter LaFarge, Glenn Chandler, Dylan early stuff, Gil Turner. And I'm wondering if you think or thought at the time if their work was in a sense the 1960s equivalent of what the almanacs and the people's songsters were doing.
Yep, I'd say it was. Not only that, in the 1970s, kept right on going. You just didn't see it on TV. In the 1980s, it went on even stronger. You just don't see it on TV. In the 1990s, there are more songs and some terrific songs being written, but you don't see them on TV. And I think the people on TV are a little worried because you can say things with a song and they're worried, what are you going to say? It hasn't been passed. It hasn't been approved of.
The 60s were looked on as a tumultuous time, politically and socially, and did the songs being written then, do you think, had an impact on politics and social terms of the time? A real aspect?
Of course. I know that the civil rights movement which Martin Luther King led from 1955 to 1968 when he was assassinated, would not have existed without music. My guess is the anti-war movement that built up in the end of the 60s and the early 70s would not have been half so strong if it hadn't been for all the songs. The songs were quite extraordinary, too. The one which I sang for more people than I ever sang for in my life, I think, maybe at least live, like 250,000, 500,000 people near the Washington Monument. It was only 8 seconds long. Yoko Ono and her husband John Lennon made it up. All we are saying is give peace a chance. That's all it was. Sang it over and over for 8 minutes. We had all 250,000 of them or more singing it with us. Their bodies were swaying from right to left. It was like a gigantic ballet. And Bob Dylan songs like Blowin' in the Wind. Good poetry. And this tradition has now, of course, been picked up by rock and Sting and Billy Bragg and a whole lot of others. U2 are all over making up songs. Not only in this country, in Latin America, in Europe. I guess there's not a country in the world where singers aren't getting involved, making up songs, and politicians, very frankly, are scared. They don't know who's passing on these, who's approving them.
I was talking to Kenny Goldstein about the Dylan song, The Times They Are Changing, and he said to me, that's a song that wasn't a folk song at its inception, but it's become one.
Well, this is the traditional folklorist definition. Yeah. I can repeat it. Kenny Goldstein, the folklorist, makes a good point. He says none of these were folk songs when they were written, but some of them, when they became so well known that ordinary folks memorized the words and could sing them without ever having seen them on paper, then they were folk songs.
You played a role in starting, as I understand it, Broadside at the top of the song sheet. The legend, I can ask if it's true, is that it came up in some correspondence between you and Malvina Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
Sis Cunningham was transcribing. I was wondering if you could comment on why Broadside was needed at the time, and did it succeed in your opinion?
Malvina Reynolds would write a new song every few weeks, or more often. I accused her of writing a song before breakfast every morning. She looked at me severely and says, "You know it's not that easy." But Sing Out magazine only came out every couple of months, couldn't print them all. And not only Malvina was writing songs at a great rate, but a lot of others were. And Malvina said, we need a magazine that will just concentrating on new songs. And Sis Cunningham, who'd been in the Almanac Singers with me, she's about 10 years older than I am. She's still going strong in her 80s, though. She said, do you think that I could edit a magazine like that? I said, you sure could. And she and her husband, who was a journalist, good writer, the two of them put it out for decades. It's folded now. They're too old to carry it on, and I sure miss it. It's a good little magazine.
Do you think it had an impact on both writers and listeners in the time?
Well, it encouraged all sorts of people. They'd look in Broadside and said, hey, look what they're writing. I'd like to try that. And relatively unknown people, completely unknown people, would send in the songs, and they were good songs.
Yeah. Comment on the phone, I believe, to Doreen, which is something to the effect of that you had decided that in the 60s, folks weren't getting folk music spread around in the right way. We thought the commercial interest might have been the right way, but I think we were wrong. Now we've learned to do it right. And I'm not sure I'm paraphrasing that directly, but to get my thought, maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Well, that's oversimplifying it.
Okay.
There's times I wished one of my songs could sell 1 million copies. I had a song called Waist Deep in the Big Muddy. And John Hammond, who worked with me at Columbia Records, even agreed to put out a single. I would have been glad. Might have shortened the war. It would have been a hit. I know. But a friend of mine was working in the office of the Columbia Records distributor in Denver. He says, Pete, your record came in. My boss just exploded. He says, those people in New York must be nuts to think I can promote a song like this. He says, Pete, your record didn't leave the shelves. I would have been glad if it had. On the other hand, in the long run, I promote all sorts of little efforts, whether it's a little local organization trying to save a river, like the Clearwater here is trying to save the Hudson River, or a union that's trying to get decent pay and vacations and health insurance, like Local 1199 in New York, or children who want to know what's going on. I sing in schools and summer camps all the time, and I'm glad to say there are thousands of people like me singing at schools and summer camps now. Thousands. In fact, tomorrow there's a little local meeting called the People's Music Network. There'll be several hundred there, swapping experiences, swapping songs. It's like a convention of chefs. You don't go there to hear your favorite song sung by your favorite singer. It's like a convention of chefs all sampling each other's soups.
Comment I've heard